This is the Classic Auto Mall podcast, broadcast from the studios inside the Classic Auto Mall in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, just 1 hour west of Philadelphia at Pennsylvania Turnpike exit 298, featuring nearly 1,000 classic, vintage, and barn-find vehicles for sale under one climate-controlled roof. Now, here's your host, Classic Auto Mall president and the man with all the toys, Stewart Howden.
Well, here we are once again. Maybe it's me. It's my volume.
Did you fall asleep there?
If the technical difficulty falls on me, then it's really not a technical difficulty. It's an untechnical difficulty.
All right, let's just restart it. I'll edit it.
No. We're all good. Show number 119. So we don't have this down pat yet, as you can very well tell. And it usually falls on my shoulders, and why it's not.
It's an administrative problem.
Yeah. It's an upper level management issue that will be worked out in
it will.
During the I don't know.
Next meeting.
The next board meeting that we have.
That's right.
Which will be never, because I can control the meeting, and if I don't want something to change, we just don't have a meeting, and then nothing can change, right?
That's what's good about being boss.
Yeah, it's good to be king, whatever it pays, as Tom Petty said. Anyway, thanks for joining us on our 119th show. Our first airing of this show will be on December the 16th of 2023. So if on America's Web Radio, you'll hear it there, and hopefully all the other outlets that we advertise or promote the podcast on: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podcast Index, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, which is really, really cool. We've got Deezer, which I have no idea what that is, Listen Notes, Google Assistant, Player FM, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, plus Alexa.
Wow.
So there's all of our different areas. We should also do the same thing when we talk about where we advertise all of our cars on all the different websites that we do. We could run down that list.
It's a great idea.
Because I like long lists of things.
That's a good idea. You know what?
Which is a nice segue to
where cars went this week.
Why? At least it's not 3 weeks worth like it was last week that we did. That became quite a
and these
a
are cars
task.
that have been shipped and
they're sold. Signed, sealed, delivered, sold,
done deal.
sold.
Not just deposit, but
not just
deal.
deposit. So where did they go this past week? How about Joppa, Maryland? How about Gettysburg, Pennsylvania? Williamsville, New York. Manheim, Pennsylvania. New York. Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Reading, Pennsylvania. Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. Sussex, Wisconsin. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Chester, New Jersey. Port Royal, South Carolina. Willis, Texas. North Richland Hills, Texas. Lincoln University, Pennsylvania. Didn't know that existed. Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Harrington, Delaware. Milford, Delaware. Joplin, Missouri. Bardstown, Kentucky. Diamond Bar, California. How many is that? What, like
12 states. 12 states.
12 states.
Including Asbury Park.
Yeah, which is a cool place.
Home of Bruce Springsteen's career, really. He doesn't really live there. He lives in Colts Neck, New Jersey, for those of you.
Don't give his exact address out.
You can't miss it. It's the big farmhouse.
It's the big house.
38 Boss Road.
Yeah, it's the big house. So you just have to look for the biggest house you can find, and that will be his house.
Long driveway.
Yeah, that's the problem with being a rich guy. You can get on Google Earth and you can find a big house, and you know it's either a rich guy or a famous guy or some athlete or musician or whatever.
Yeah, Kenny Rogers, when I lived in California, Kenny Rogers had like the biggest house on top of a mulhole in there.
Right.
And you could see it from a mile away. That's Kenny Rogers' house.
You know what's amazing, though, is, to be famous in this day and age, we talk about this often, is that everybody knows everything about you. They know what you drive. They know where you live. They know
Thanks
what
to
you
the
make.
internet,
Yeah, what you make. And they know everything. I don't know that it would be as fun to be famous today as it would have been back in the 50s or 60s. And even then, I'm sure there was a lot of things that you gave up. I mean, fame is not all it's cracked up to be. I can attest to that. My famousness of this podcast.
Oh, I thought you were going to go back to Mel Tillis, talk about Mel.
No, we could talk about Mel, but it's me. Now I'm the famous.
Yeah,
guy,
people hear your voice, and it's like, I know you.
Guy.
I know where you live. I know where you work.
Yeah, I know who you are. I know where you live. And so I used to be introduced as Mel Tillis' son-in-law. Then I was Marshall's dad because my son is now, alderman in Branson, so everybody knows Marshall. And so now I'm went from Mel Tillis' son-in-law to Marshall's dad. Now you're the guy on the podcast.
Right on.
Is your name Steve?
You found your own identity.
Yeah, finally, after 61, almost 62 years, right? Anyway, thanks to the Pat Travers Band, as always. And don't forget, if you want to hear more information about what we do and check us out, newsletter. I always want to say newsletter.com, but that wouldn't be our website.
No.
It's classicautomall.com, and then you click on the newsletter and you fill in your name and email address. And then we send you once a month, maybe possibly two, depending on if we have something else going on or an auction or something special to announce.
Right.
Otherwise, we send you one a month. And it's pretty entertaining. You know, we have a joke of the week, and we have the picture of the week, and they're usually funny, and a little short letter from me telling you all the good stuff.
It's good when the joke is usually funny.
Yeah, those unfunny jokes are just, they don't get much traction.
You know, when they used to have the comics in the newspaper, there were so many of them that you would look at and go,
that's not funny.
Not funny.
Not funny.
Marmaduke was always funny, though.
Oh,
And Family Circle.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're still there. They still have comics.
Yes, they
on
do.
there. We still see that from time to time.
And Stewart, if someone wants to contact the podcast and maybe correct us on something or ask a question, what would they do?
Podcast at classicautomall.com.
Beauty.
Although I haven't checked that in about a month. There's probably 900.
That'd be good.
I should probably check that.
Yeah.
I think I should make a note to check that. and
Yeah,
make
or
sure that
give me.
I haven't won $1 million and nobody's told me.
Or delegate.
Yeah, delegate.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We might have to do that as well too.
Yeah.
I'm probably got that Nigerian guy who's giving away all the money, and I've missed it because he's gone, come and gone. I always jokingly say it's going to be funny one day. The guy was like, "Man, I tried for years to give away millions of dollars, and nobody would respond."
Yeah.
So anyway, don't respond to those. How many cars in inventory? You say 1,000.
Wow.
94.
Wow.
Yep.
We
I
are
tell people
sick.
almost 1,100.
We are, well, then that's like a funny joke, right? Almost 1,100. Boy, that's good, Steve.
No, we
It's
don't
good,
have to-
it's good math on your
That's
part,
right.
you know?
Math major.
1,094. That's almost it.
Almost 11. About 1,100.
And-
Close to 1,500.
And what was the coincidence you mentioned about a Grand Prix?
Well, somebody commented on a TikTok. I forget which post it was. Doesn't matter which post. And they said, "Hey, do you guys have any 77 Pontiac Grand Prix there?" And I said, "No." At the time, it was no. And 2 days later, there's one that shows up.
we
So-
just got
I
one.
just saw it today.
Yeah.
I had one of those, and it's
Oh yeah,
it's nice.
They're actually highly desirable, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah.
we sell those pretty good.
they don't last very long at all. I had bought one not too long
That's
ago,
right.
and that Ember Glow, or what was it was Fire Mist or Ember Glow, or one of those unusual dark red colors.
Yeah,
And it didn't last long at all. And I mean, it immediately had activity on it. And it's funny. We can't predict everything, but there are certain cars that come in here and we know it's going to be like that Ferrari replica, the Alfa Romeo.
250 replica.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was it an Alfa Romeo?
Yeah, Alfa Romeo based, right? No,
No. It was not an Alfa Romeo.
it was from last week.
Come on, boys, duke it out. Let's go. Take off the gloves.
Austin?
Austin Healey.
Was it Austin Healey?
Yeah, 106 is what it was. It was based on, and this guy spent almost a lifetime of putting this car together. And it was one of those, it's a Ferrari Testarossa replica to some degree. It doesn't look exactly like it, but it's just an homage, if you will, to the Testarossa in the 50s. And it's beautifully done. And the guy hand did it, and it was just amazingly well done. And it was one of those ones that came in and we said, that's going to sell quickly. Right. And it did. And we took a deposit on it within about the first 3 days. And literally for the next week, while the guy was, doing his transferring funds, whatever people do when they buy something and have to get money from one account to the other, we must have had 15 or 20 different offers on that car, all within an acceptable range.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's such a we don't get cars like that quality, but we have tons. I mean, it's a special car. It was a one-off, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a
hand
one-off.
built.
Yeah, so you probably could only get one.
I will say that our first major hit on TikTok was way back 2 years ago on a 77 Grand Prix. It was dark blue.
Right.
I had no idea. I mean, I shot it and the reaction was crazy. And it was then that I knew that those are special and people really want them.
This one is a base model. It's a bench seat.
Right.
Just kind of a plain Jane. So especially if you want to upgrade it or do a resto mod type things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, but the SJs are popular.
Yeah, and you don't want to mess with those generally if they've got the 400.
Right.
And the original tranny and all that. But if you've got something that's, the three, well, I don't know. Let's see. What motor would have been in the base model? 350, I guess it would have been.
Yep.
And then in later years, a 301 you could get in the Grand
Did they put a
Prix.
455 in those at any time?
Yeah, they did in 70 and 71, I believe. Maybe even further.
That was the bigger
along
body.
that. Yeah, that was the more squared looking, good looking car.
Yeah, they're great.
Always good looking cars. I mean, they were class. They were, I always liked Trans Ams when I was a kid. The classy kids in the neighborhood liked the Grand Prix, and even the Monte Carlos for that matter. They were performance oriented. They were grand touring cars versus just muscle cars. Of course, I'd argue that mine wasn't really much of a muscle car because it only had 170 horsepower. It was automatic.
I had the 6 cylinders. I had a base Firebird 72, an Esprit 74, and a Formula 7. Oops, I just bumped myself. I bumped my button.
No problem. So
76. Yeah.
So we decided to bring back our discussion of our weekly discussion of car movies or car related racing car movies. And Steve was given a little homework last night, and I'm hoping you completed said homework.
I watched many clips of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but
that's this generation. You've become.
That's right.
You're becoming a millennial in your old age.
Well, my wife got this new TV, a smart TV or something, and I can't figure it out, and it's just crazy. But you can get YouTube on the TV, so I watch a bunch of clips.
In order to have a smart TV, you need to be a smart person, right? You need to really have
the whole
a
thing's
technology.
Stupid.
You need to have a technology degree.
Yeah,
there are some things that are so complicated anymore for no particular reason.
Right.
I mean, I could go, I got a new electronic device thing that's complicated and you can't tell if it's on, and I'm not going to go into what it is because then it'll just be.
We'll use our imagination.
Well, it's not, it's not,
nothing funky.
Nothing for lovemaking.
I can't figure out how to turn this on.
It's an electronic device that does something that you could do without an electronic device. It just anyway.
Complicates things. Right. I just want to sit down and watch a football game, and it is the most frustrating thing because I have to find
it. Amazon Prime, and you better be on that, and you better watch that, and it's difficult.
I don't know.
Knows how to do it. Anyway, the car movie that we're going to discuss this week is Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, which is starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly and your buddy Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
You really liked in the movie, I understand, from your
Are we going to get into it now? Are we going to get into it now or next segment?
We'll get into it next segment because we only got a minute and 9 seconds to talk about it. So,
hey, let me ask you something.
Yes.
Because I get this question a lot from people interested in buying. Do we finance?
Well, that's an excellent question,
in a minute,
Steve.
in 60 seconds.
Well, don't put pressure on me. You may not be able to answer that.
Trying to fill the time.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
1 second.
We do not finance in-house, but we recommend companies that do finance. And the most popular one that we recommend, because it's the easiest one to deal with so far that we found, is JJ Best. And they're just very easy to work with. Our clients call them directly. They work with them directly. We don't take paperwork. We don't, fill out credit forms and credit score and do credit scores and all that. They do all that. So the nice thing about it is it lets them do what they're good at and lets us do what we're good at. And what we're good at is selling the cars and promoting them and presenting them and all that. And they're better at the financing and all that kind of stuff. So if you get a chance, jjbest.com, and we'll tell you that if you call us. And there's other companies that we use as well, too. We just happen to have a really good working relationship with JJ Best, and our clients are really comfortable with them. So when we return, we'll get into the Ballad of Ricky Bobby on the Classic Auto Mall podcast. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Whether you want to buy or sell a classic collectible or special interest vehicle, you need to visit the Classic Auto Mall website for more information. If you're looking to buy, you can easily search our inventory of more than 1,000 vehicles on the web at classicautomall.com.
Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
I'd forgotten about that scene. See, I haven't seen the movie in a while. That is, for those of you who do not know, that's a line from Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, the movie we are featuring this week, the car automotive themed racing et al. Movie. And I was asking Steve before we went to break, did he do his homework? And he watched the movie and he watched bits and pieces of it because he's become this MTV generation, which dates me so much when I say MTV generation, because people go, I don't know what that means.
What's MTV?
But it was funny. Remember when MTV first came out? It was that breakaway. It was so cool. I think literally we knew that it was coming out, and some people that lived in another neighborhood in another cable zone or whatever it was back in the day, were going to get it, and we weren't. And the cable boxes then had a long cord and a brown box that sat right in front of you, and the cord went all the way to the TV, and you push those buttons that if you push a button, the other one comes up, those type of things. So there's like 20 buttons, and you push one down, and you're watching that one. If you push the other one, that one pops up, and this one comes down. So
I also went over a neighbor's house.
We went to a neighbor's house, and they lived more out in the country, but apparently they had MTV first, and this was 1981. Right. And so we went there. I think we watched this daggum thing for like the whole weekend. I think we stayed there. We ate in front of it. We watched it because a lot of these bands that we had heard of and listened to, we may not have seen them in concert because we lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. So it wasn't like we got every band. We got the bigger bands. We got Bob Seger, and we got Van Halen, and we got Aerosmith and those guys. But there was bands that you'd heard about, but you never got to see. All of a sudden in MTV, they're in your living room. And of course, that was akin to Don Kirshner's rock concert back in the day, and the Midnight Special back in the day before that, and all the bands that you'd never seen. It was just always cool because during that time in 1981, there wasn't a lot of outlets to see things like on the internet. So you weren't. It's like the new cars when they came out. You had no way to see them until they actually came to the dealer showroom.
Yeah, or
the newspaper,
or auto show.
Or an auto show, like we talked about with our buddy Kevin Mazzicola.
Where we will be in January.
That's exactly
live
right.
broadcast.
Live broadcast. We're going to really try to do one of those live broadcast things.
Scary. Very
I'm nervous
scary.
about it already.
Let's
but anyway, so
January 17th. Let's mention that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd forgotten that date. So Steve, in fact, did complete his homework, but he did it with the cheat sheet, almost like, what was the book that we used to get?
Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes. You did Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
So you just went on YouTube and watched all the highlights of the movie. You didn't have, you got to sit through the downtimes too in order to really appreciate a movie. And maybe that's your problem with movies because you're not a movie guy. As I'm lecturing you.
I think I have ADD because it's hard for me to sit for 2 hours.
But I think we have self-induced ADD, and myself included. Like we want it to be just that.
That's true.
We don't have time for all that.
As I look back on my elementary school, what do you call it, report card?
Yeah.
I pretty much I was
attention span deficit,
undiagnosed ADD back then.
They didn't know what it was called back in the old days.
They
didn't call it ADD. They called it had something wrong with it.
He's not paying attention.
He's not paying attention.
That's right.
Boy needs to be slapped upside the head with a ruler. Or
principal's office.
Can you spank kids in school anymore, I wonder?
I don't think so.
No way.
Highly doubtful.
Or even grab their arm and sit down.
You can't even hug kids anymore. Please, let's not go there.
So I had a coach one time, the basketball coach, Coach Brotherton at Bearden Junior High School. And he said, I'm not going to tell you guys another time, do not pick up those basketballs. So the minute he turned his back, I went over and picked up a basketball, and he saw me, and he ran at me, and in full throttle with a paddle, a big old paddle, up against my rear end, and sent me flying into the stands.
That's not cool, actually.
Well, nor did I think so at the time either.
That's crossing a line.
Crossing the line.
I spent the night at my 6th grade. I was the teacher's pet in 6th grade. Right. Ms. Packer.
Right.
For those of you in Northeast Philly, and I spent the night at her house several times. Because we were going to a bird show. Anyway.
Sure you were. So wait a minute.
She drove an X19, by the way, a Fiat X19 in the mid-'70s.
So,
was the coolest
I wanted one, yeah.
That's
very cool.
I'm reading so many things in between the lines. 6th grade?
Yeah.
Were you tall for your age? 6th grade?
I was just a good kid.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. We're going to delve more into this as the psychology. I'm going to lay you out on this table, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. Anyway, Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, released in 2006. And if you haven't seen it, it is sophomoric humor at best, but it is hilarious. I mean, the Ricky Bobby is a NASCAR driver. And the way they pitched this movie to the studio is they said, Will Ferrell as a NASCAR driver. That's all they said. And that's all they needed to say. Because Will Ferrell at the time had just done Old School, and I mean, Old School, arguably, comedy is funny as they get.
Is that the one he's a soccer coach? Is that the one he's a soccer coach?
No, it's the one he's the, they have, the guy, one of the guys, their buddy goes back to college, and they start their own fraternity, and Will Ferrell,
unsanctioned fraternity.
And he goes back as an adult kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, they all go back. They're all adults, and they're, but they're hitting on the young girls.
Funny.
And
seems appropriate.
And it's a hilarious movie. So at that time, I mean, all you had to say was one line about Will Ferrell to say that, we're in,
Listen, aside from his political and social views, which are wackadoodle.
Sure.
he's one of the funniest actors.
Oh, no question
maybe
about
the
it.
funniest currently.
Yeah, and he was just off of SNL at the time, too.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, he was really riding away when
Hilarious.
Talladega Nights came. And, of course, NASCAR was a little bit, I don't know, suspect of it because Days of Thunder, which we'll discuss at a later date, didn't settle well with everybody in NASCAR. And,
Really?
Yeah, there was some blowback from it and maybe some stuff that was not,
But they were okay
accurate.
with the kiss at the end of this movie.
You were really harping on that.
Well,
It
was unexpected. I don't remember that from originally watching it.
You never originally watched it. Maybe the problem.
Yeah, probably.
You said you did.
I didn't get
but-
to the end of it.
Yeah, you didn't get to the end of anything. You're one of those guys that reads like 3/4 of a book and puts it aside and it's done. And never going back to it. Anyway, this thing, the budget to film it was $72 million.
Wow.
And it grossed $163 million at the box office. Of course, I'm not sure that those stats are going to hold true anymore. I mean, how are you going to measure the success of a movie when people don't go to movie theaters?
Well, like I said, I was prompted to rent the movie last night. It was either $3.99 or I could have it for a week for $14.99. So they're still making money on it.
And it's actually easier. Well, I guess you can't tell how many people watch it at home.
Right.
But you know that it got downloaded.
At least one person has watched it. But you don't know if there's a group of 8 people watching the movie, which may be illegal anyway. Aren't you not supposed to do that?
Leave the room.
I think only if you charge them to watch it.
Well, there you go. That
Can't
makes
charge
sense.
admission.
But anyway, it's a hilarious movie. The two sons are named Walker and Texas Ranger.
Right.
And his sponsors were Laughing Clown Beer and then later Wonder Bread.
Yeah.
Which if you grew up in the South, or maybe up here too.
No, they had it here.
Wonder Bread was...
Midwest.
There was a great line. Who's the narrator? Not the narrator, but the
Mike Joy.
Yeah, Mike Joy. Mike Joy says that Wonder Bread car is toast.
I'd forgotten that
And they
line.
didn't have a lot of CG still then. There was, the sparks and things, but they wrecked a lot of cars. That's probably why that budget was up there.
$72 million. The first weekend it did $44 million. It was the number one movie released in 2000, or not in 2006, but during that weekend.
And they went, well, we're halfway home, guys.
And of course, one of the lines between Cal Naughton, which is John C. Reilly, who's hilarious, was shake and bake, and that was when they did the slingshot move. And I remember one of the scenes in the movie, Cal was like, Ricky, it'd be nice if I could come in first and to get the slingshot sometime. And Ricky was like, no, Cal, there can only be one number one, and you're not quite ready for it. And then that splintered their friendship later on in life.
Uh-huh.
But his dad's motto to him when he was a kid was, if you ain't first, you're last. And when finally his estranged father came back into the picture, he said to Ricky Bobby said to him, he said, Dad, he said, I've lived my motto by that saying that you said to me, if you ain't first, you're last. And he says, Ricky, I didn't really mean that. And I was high on drugs when I told you that anyway. It's like he lived his whole life. But, that was taken from a Vince Lombardi saying, which was not ain't. It was, if you're not first, you're last. Not if you ain't first, you're last. And winning isn't everything. It's the only thing was the other thing that Vince Lombardi said, which was...
But for Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers, there would be another day.
John Vicenda just entered the building.
I love it. And, of course, one of the things about these movies that come out like this particular movie is that they aren't very critically acclaimed. I don't think they're going to win Academy Awards and stuff like that, which is a shame because something that makes you laugh out loud hard is, ought to get some kind of consideration. And I get it. It's a little sophomoric humor. But
therapeutic.
But it's very therapeutic, and it's fun to. It's funny when I'll be watching something, a comedian on YouTube or something, and Kathy's over there reading. My wife is over there reading her thing, and I start laughing like I can't I'm laughing so hard I can't stop laughing, and she's looking at me like, you are a real loser.
What are you laughing
What's wrong
at?
with you? That's not that funny.
Oh,
I'm
sometimes something gets you. And
Ron White is one of those that'll get you. I mean, it just tears coming down your eyes. You're laughing so. And he's not. It's certainly not any, he's crude and a lot of crude stuff. He says it, though, sometimes in a way that you can get away with it more. Does that make sense? That,
very droll.
Yeah, that you can kind of get away with it, that if anybody else said it, it would come off pretty bad. And he's self-deprecating, he'd make fun of himself. And I love the guys that do that. And I think Will Ferrell's like that. And anyway, if you get a chance and you haven't seen it and you're looking for a good laugh on a Friday night and, for $3.99 or whatever it costs to get the movie.
And it is car related. And some of the footage of the racing, since you said there's no CG or there was less CG, I mean, some pretty good footage. I'm considering that Ford versus Ferrari was not lauded, but celebrated for its shots and its cinematography. There were some actually good racing shots in this movie.
Well, and so was, I mean, if you look at Grand Prix and Le Mans, Steve McQueen and James Garner's movies, racing movies, I mean, they were done before there was anything. They were strapping cameras on with duct tape.
Yes, they were. They were.
To do whatever they could
really
to get the shot. I mean, I remember the first time that you could see an in-car camera on a race car, and I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. I mean, they were, you know, the perspective that you never got. Now they have the in-car camera on Formula One where you can see the driver's view, and it's got that bar in the center from the halo thing. And I mean, man, you think, you know, your sight is, you know, this if you're watching on TV, if you're listening on podcast, you don't know what I just did.
Look at the camera.
But I know where the camera is. But they
and now Stewart is pretending that he has
he's
AI
taking
goggles.
it back. He's taking it back. I bought some AI
VR goggles,
but that's the whole reason to get back on Facebook, which is a whole nother long story. But anyway, if you get a chance, see Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. It's funny. Don't take it seriously. If you take it seriously, if you're not into, you know, two men kissing, you might want to not watch the end. But Sacha Baron Cohen, who plays Borat, he's this odd guy, and he's like
an F1 driver, isn't he? He's a big renowned
from France. He's sponsored by Perrier.
And his husband is the guy from Conan O'Brien, which I found.
Oh the sidekick
Andy Richter.
That was pretty funny.
So the Chevelle that Ricky's dad drove, there's a buddy of mine who had a show in Branson, Missouri, and he went to the local restoration guy and had him create one just like it. And of course, that was modeled after Smokey Yunick's 67 Chevelle that got banned from Daytona. He brought it to Daytona. Big Bill France told him that no problem, we'll pass the car. It got there. They said you can't have a made up frame. You have to have the manufacturer's frame. Well, I mean, you can't change a frame in any period of time before a race on Friday and your race on Sunday. So it got into a big thing, and Smokey Yunick actually threw a big wrench at Bill France.
Oh, really?
And then Bill France sent him a check for $1,500 apologizing. And,
but that livery, that sort of black and gold.
It was black with a gold top, but it was a different body style, 66, 67.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the 70, or 69 was the one in the movie. So.
Similar scene in Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly.
Throwing the wrench.
Exactly. So anyway, when we return, we'll talk about some of the new inventory coming in to the Classic Auto Mall and where we got to 1,094 cars. We'll talk to you in a couple of minutes.
If you'd like to know all the advantages of selling your car through consignment, the information is available on our website so you can chat with a professional who can answer all your questions. It's easy, safe, and convenient, plus we sell worldwide. We're always adding new vehicles to our inventory, so make sure you check our website early and often. Subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on social media.
And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studios in beautiful downtown Morgantown, Pennsylvania, home of the Hollywood Casino, home of Classic Auto Mall.
And some great thrift shops. So if you're into
fantastic thrift
really
shop.
Good stuff. People used to come here, apparently, who told us that? The producer, what's his name?
Obie O'Brien.
Thank you. Obie O'Brien.
To be here for
said he used to come here before all this was here. He used to come here just to thrift. And there's still some remnant thrift shops here that are great.
We've been here for 6 years, and my daughter showed up last year, and we went to one of these thrift shops, and we were blown away. And not because... You know, most thrift shops you go into have stuff that looks like it was made for a thrift shop, like Coca-Cola collectibles. And this had this oddball stuff that you just find in grandma's basement that was just weird.
Lots of car stuff, too.
Lots of car stuff. And one more thing about the movie. Their fancy Sunday go-to-eating dinner was Applebee's.
Yeah.
But I watched another great movie last night while you were watching The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I watched Almost Famous. Crickets.
It's rock and roll. It's a rock and roll.
You're very, very good.
And it's what's his name?
Yes,
he's the guy from Boston.
No, the guy.
Kirk Cameron?
No, Cameron. The movie is about Cameron Crowe, the guy who wrote for Rolling Stone magazine back in the day. He was married to Nancy Wilson.
He was a kid, and he
15 years old, and he wanted to be a reporter, and he was befriended by the guy who ran Cream magazine, Lester Bangs, and it's a whole rock scene, and it's really there's a scene in there that will bring tears to your eye almost every time you watch it. So. And I won't tell you that until after you've seen it, and then you have to pick which one it was. And if you get it wrong, we're gonna have to part ways, Steve.
Yeah.
And for our listeners in small towns, sometimes an Applebee's is the big restaurant. Like really around here, it's just the Hollywood Casino is the fanciest place to eat.
If we had an Applebee's across the street, I'd be there 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
And I'm not making fun of Applebee's. It's just funny because Applebee's is kind of on the less expensive side of the Fern Bar, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fern Bar is just a thing that they had when you went from a McDonald's to a sit-down place, and they put a bunch of plants inside of it.
Right.
And it became, I mean, it's still fast food. I mean, Applebee's used to be that everything that they served came prepackaged, and you either dumped it in a pot or you put it in a microwave, and it was always portioned and packaged, and it was exactly the same. So consistency, woohoo!
Yeah.
Quality, you know.
Right.
So, but I can remember when Olive Garden first came out, it was awful. I couldn't hardly eat there. And,
really?
And it's gotten pretty good.
There, yeah, it is.
It's not bad.
And a good value.
And it's an excellent value, and you get all the soup and breadstick.
Breadstick and stand.
I'm going to have to do a food show.
Yeah. You're going to have to do their sausage soup.
I think there's a market here if somebody wants to open a restaurant. I think
sure.
Morgantown is ripe for a decent restaurant.
How about TGI Fridays even, or something like that?
Or the Buffalo Wings.
Yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings or something.
The Classic Auto Mall Cafe.
Do I have to fill in all the gaps for you?
I know. Adderall hasn't hit yet.
I know.
Aren't you supposed to not be driving when you take that stuff? So, anyway.
And you mentioned old cable, too. In 1972, I worked in a small town in Michigan that had cable TV.
Right.
Because those were really the areas that you didn't get to. The big cities had, maybe more than 3 channels. They had maybe 5 or 6.
Which was a lot. We grew up with 3. And I just saw yesterday advertising like Sharper Image Catalog, which still comes to my house for some god reason. I haven't bought anything from there in years. An antenna that will pick up local broadcast stations like the old days.
Oh, really?
But you set it on top of your TV.
We still have them. I have them in my house for, we have an autistic, my wife's autistic sister.
Right.
And all she likes to watch is Channel 6, ABC. So that's, I just put it up and the towers are line of sight and it just comes right in.
Rabbit ear. We had rabbit ears.
Yeah, we had back in the day. You put
Eventually.
aluminum foil on them if you couldn't get a signal, right?
That's right.
Sometimes you even had to cross them.
Extra hanger.
And a secret, if you're near the tower, paperclip back in the cable TV thing, paperclip makes a good antenna.
That might be cheating. So let's just make sure that those of you who try this, it's not recommended by Classic Auto Mall.
That's right.
It's not endorsed
a lot of ports in new TVs. A lot of
don't put it in the wrong port.
There's no coaxial anymore.
You don't want to put it in the power port.
But if it has a coaxial.
Okay. Let's digress away from this. Thank you.
What are we talking about? New inventory?
New inventory we are. 1956 Buick Roadmaster Riviera 4-door hardtop. You seen this car? It's obviously not. Spruce, because your delay and hesitation in responding.
It's just 1,100 cars. It's really hard to remember exactly if I've seen it or not. I'm sure I've seen a green Buick.
Well, here's the problem.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
You don't know if you've seen something because you may have seen it here. You may have seen it there. You may have seen it at the car show. You may have seen it. It's like, who knows where you saw it? I know I've seen it.
I know exactly which car you're talking about.
This car is spectacular.
It is.
It is a near flawless restoration.
Really?
Power windows and seats, AACA National Senior, the Wonder Bar radio, Fireball 322 cubic inch V8, and the Dynaflow automatic transmission. Spruce green metallic and foam green over foam green and just regular green. It doesn't say regular green. It just says green.
And the paint is really nice on this car.
I mean,
spectacular.
Peter writes, there are restorations and then there are restorations.
Done. Give me an echo.
Do I have
No, he has you have it on
we could do echo, but
let's don't.
Number 16 on there.
This thing is, I love Peter says, with nary a flaw to be found. Nary, there's a good word for you. I like nary.
It is.
This thing is, first of all, it's unusual for a 4-door car to have this level of restoration done to it because in the pecking order, the 4-door is the least valuable in body styles, if you will. Now, there's 2 versions of a 4-door, and people don't understand this, just like there's 2 versions of a 2-door. There's a 4-door sedan and a 4-door hardtop. Hardtop has no bar in between the front and rear window. So when you open the front and rear windows on both sides of the car, it's like...
What is that, B-pillar? No B-pillar?
B-pillar.
Post?
right,
correct.
wide open. Yep.
Post.
Then you've got a 2-door coupe
Yep.
and a 2-door sedan because it has, again, the B-pillar
Post.
there.
Yep.
And if it doesn't have that, then it's an open. And I got in an argument with guys all the time. We've talked about this. But anyway.
Did they make a 2-door Roadmaster in the mid-50s, though? I'm not sure.
Probably did. I think they
One
did.
big, huge door?
Yeah. door that weighed 9. Well,
they are huge.
How about the second-gen Camaros and Firebirds?
Yeah.
Those doors were ridiculously heavy. I mean, they were always sagging. You always had to, when you closed the door in one of those, generally you had to lift up and then push the door closed, because otherwise, if you tried to just close it, it was missing the striker by about a mile.
That's right.
And so, but this car, I mean, the level of restoration on this car, it was a labor of love. Somebody did it because that was the car that they remembered or they had or grandpa had or whatever it was. Somebody didn't do it to make a profit. Like you might do an SS 396 Chevelle and you might find one in barn find condition and you restore it and you take it to, one of the big auction houses, or you bring it here and you get $180,000 for it. And wow, you made a home run. That wasn't what this was. This is a guy who spent whatever it took to make this the best 56 Buick Roadmaster Riviera. And I would argue that it's probably one of the finest on the planet, if not the finest on the planet. Now, you might find a two-door hardtop that would be better, or a convertible that would be better, or I say better, or as in equal condition. But this thing is...
And I've always liked the 56 because the tail light was more refined than the 55. It had the 55 had that rounded piece on the tail light. This is a nice, smooth, vertical tail light.
Another 50s car that we've just recently gotten in, but only a 1 year only body style, is the 1958 Chevrolet Impala hardtop. And you think about this, Chevrolet went from the 57 Chevy to the 58 Chevy, and completely different body style, and then 59 completely new body style.
Right.
1 year. How did they justify the tooling and the cost? And I mean, that was something they just didn't do back then. And these 58, I think the 58 Impala is arguably one of the coolest 50s car there are. They're just really cool looking. They're called the Sport Coupe and the two-door hardtop.
Beautiful grille.
Yeah, this is onyx black over black and turquoise, the AACA Thomas McKean Tour Award. Now, this has got a 350 V8 in it. It's got a replacement motor. The original motor, something happened to it. And it's got vintage air, which hard to fault people for putting vintage air in a black two-door hardtop car. It might get a little warm in there.
It might.
It mightn't, as they like to say in the South.
That's right.
Turbo Hydromatic 350. And, man, but it was a huge success, which lends you to wonder why they changed it. It must have been... There was more to the story. We should find out the story of the 58 Impala and really why they did it.
And question for the experts, and I'm going to even include Randy in the control room here.
Yes.
Why are there not a lot of 58 anythings?
Well, that's a good question.
Two reasons I've heard.
Okay, I'm listening.
Recession year. And a very severe winter over much of the country.
Could have very well
they rotted out. Not a lot were sold, and what they had rotted out.
Right. Well, because people don't or forget that you can see rust on a brand new car's underside or even the top side, because these cars, once they were built at the factory, they didn't have room to park them indoors. They didn't have the classic auto mall.
People didn't have big garages like that.
Well, I'm saying before they were even sold, they went outside, and they might sit outside for 6 months or a year. And back in the build quality of the late 50s, early 60s, that was almost a death knell for those things.
No, rust never sleeps.
Yeah, and rust never sleeps, as Neil Young said. Other 50s car we just got in, the 55 Chrysler C300 hardtop. Black over beige, rebuilt 300 horsepower, 331 cubic inch Hemi. This car was the hot rod of the day. It was the fastest car of the day. They only made like 725. They had dual quad. They were a Hemi power. Dual quad, if those of you don't, I'm sure most of our listeners know what a dual quad is. If you don't, it's 2 4-barrel carburetors on one intake manifold,
right?
Or a special intake manifold that has room for both. Now that was that important?
Sorry about that.
Two angels got their wings.
Clang, 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 said the trolley. Anyway, so back in the day, these things, it had 165 mile an hour speed record. Not this particular car. I mean, it may have been this particular car, but. The writer, a writer said about it, a hard-boiled, magnificent piece of semi-competition transportation built for the real automotive connoisseur. That was the description of the C300. And this thing is really, and it's just black and cool, and there's a large paper trail that shows the history of the car throughout its life and everything.
Does it have black wheels? Is this
it does.
Oh,
it does,
this car is tough.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's just
very
mean.
Now I know which one you're talking about.
See, it just takes a little spark to get that little brain going. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. I know I can. Also, another new inventory item, the 1937 Cord Westchester, Tampa blue metallic over tan. And it looks like an original Cord, except it's got some liberties taken, and it's got a 350 cubic inch crate V8, which is unusual. Turbo Hydromatic 350 on it, heat and air. and a Mustang 2 front end. And this thing is kind of a homologation, if you will, of the Accord and the Graham. So the Accord was built in the 30s, and then the body and tooling was bought by Graham, and they created the Graham Hollywood, and it had the same kind of coffin nose front end as the Accord. Anyway, this is kind of a mixture of those two, and it's a beautiful car, and that Tampa color is just spectacular. So if you get a chance, all these cars on our website, unless they've sold in the last few minutes.
Right.
They hadn't sold as of this morning, but they could have sold since we've been on the
Absolutely.
air. Because they don't alert me of any new sales until after the show. I don't want to be distracted from my loyal listeners.
Right.
Right.
We have a little cha-ching sound there. In case
I could do that.
In case you get sales.
Well, if I have to look for it, it kind of loses.
You got to memorize it.
I know, but I haven't memorized it.
Bing, yeah, cha-ching.
Money. Anyway, other inventory in the 1959 Mercedes-Benz Unimog 411. This is sap green over black. That is the name. Expertly restored, 6-speed manual tranny. It's basically go anywhere. I think a solid standing vertical brick wall they would climb right
it's
up.
Unbelievable.
This is so cool. I mean, and the guy really spent a lot of time researching it, doing it right, doing all the things that you would do to make. It's a 1.9 liter inline 4 diesel, but I mean, it's got a boatload of torque, and it'll just climb up just about anything. And then lots of ground clearance. It's just got checks all the right boxes.
Very cool car
for something like this. And it is, got lots and lots of things. And it's got, they did a drivetrain restoration on it. And of course, sometimes that's not as easy as it sounds. Rebuilding a motor or machine shopping a motor or whatever you do. Sometimes that's a lot of work and a lot of money. And especially in this day and age, it's like chroming a bumper. It doesn't come cheap.
That's right.
Check out the 59 Mercedes-Benz Unimog. And then to round things out of our new inventory, I'll get to it when I come back. We'll I've just noticed the time.
Yep.
So anyway, when we return, we'll finish our new inventory and talk about some other exciting automotive things on the Classic Auto Mall podcast. We'll see you in a minute.
If you'd like to know all the advantages of selling your car through consignment, the information is available on the Classic Auto Mall website, or you can chat with a professional who can answer all of your questions. It's easy, safe, and convenient. Plus, we sell worldwide.
And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast in the Classic Auto Mall studios in Morgantown, Pennsylvania. How about the last of our new inventory for this week? Not the last of, because if we had to go through all of them, we'd be here for 67 years and 3 days. 1969 Pontiac Firebird convertible. This thing is yaller.
It is yeller. I did a yellow series of yellow cars, and that was in there. Bright yellow cars.
It is bright yellow. Sure. 400 cubic inch V8, turbo hydromatic 400, Willwood brakes, vintage air, which I like. Listen, I don't call them much harm and foul on that. I like that people do that. And this has got suspension and chassis upgrades anyway.
Yep.
And they only made 11,649 convertible Firebirds in 1969, which sounds like a lot.
It's not.
But back in the day, that wasn't a whole lot of cars.
That's right.
And you figure between attrition and wildfires and hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and crazy kids and junkyards and cash for clunkers. Oh, there's one that we haven't talked about. It's amazing that any of these things are still around, especially with and then the build quality wasn't as great as it is today. The rust proofing and all that wasn't. They try to sell you that, but I'm not quite sure if it really meant anything.
No, I don't think
probably sprayed salty water on it so it would rust quicker, and then once the warranty expired, I'm not disparaging
our auto dealers know.
Right.
But I am going to make a note, because we can talk about cash for clunkers in one of our future shows, because that was an interesting time. And interesting, I don't mean interesting in a good way. I mean interesting in not a good way. So
we have several, just because Firebirds don't come up that often. We actually have 3 in inventory right now.
Yeah,
of that era, the late 60s.
Yeah, Gen 1.
67, 68.
Yeah, first gen or Gen 1.
Yep.
Firebirds were 67, 68, and 69.
Yep.
And then in 70 and a half, because there was a strike.
Okay.
Then you got the Camaros and the Firebirds, the rebodied style of those. And then that carried through till basically, I don't know, a 79 and a 70. They're the same architecture, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, the body's different, but.
Trans Am's up to 81, and then in 82 they changed it to the Knight Rider,
which was
version.
And the Camaro was crazy too. I remember I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and the new Camaro came out, and I was like, huh, scratching my head if you can't hear that on the podcast. Yeah, because there's no hair up there. So.
Squeak, 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 squeak.
There you go. Now you got it. Now I need that kind of squeaky noise to talk about my hair. So anyway, talking about convertibles and body styles, we were talking about favorite body styles last week, and we were talking about, we've talked in the past about favorite exhaust sounds, favorite shifters. How about favorite body styles? And think about all the different body styles there are. Coupe. And we had just talked about this a minute ago. A coupe, a sport coupe, a drop head coupe, a sedan, 2 and 4 door, cabriolet, Phaeton, convertible, saloon, shooting brake, Targa, roadster, speedster, hardtop, 2 and 4 door, Victoria, Landau, Tudor, Porter. Remember from Ford in the days?
Yep.
Sedan delivery, pickup, wagon, station wagon, touring, van, retractable, SUV, hatchback, aero coupe, minivan, estate, flower car, hearse, limousine, EV. EV is not really a body style. It's a
no.
So we'll scratch off the last one. But how about all those different? And there's probably more. I probably missed.
Well, EV is in the sense that the grills are sealed mostly.
Right.
There's no exhaust pipe out of them. Sometimes there's fake valance or whatever they call it.
Right. So what's your favorite body style?
Shooting brake.
You like the old shooting brake?
I like Ferrari FF.
Yeah.
I like what was that? A Clat.
The Lotus Eclat.
I think it was maybe I'm not sure if that was a shooting brake, but they made a shooting brake.
Yep.
The BMW
Rolls had
Z3 coupe was a shooting brake.
Yeah.
So I'm attracted to those, and of course trucks.
Well, educate the people who don't know, like me. What is that?
Well, it's a brake that you shoot at. So a shooting brake is basically a station wagon. Right?
Two-door station wagon.
A two-door station wagon.
Like a Nomad.
Like a Nomad, almost.
Okay.
But a Nomad was never referred to as a shooting brake that I know of.
Right.
Anyway.
And they're considered hatchbacks. Like the Gran Turismo.
Right.
The Panamera Gran Turismo is a shooting brake.
Right.
I'm attracted to those.
Yeah, they're cool. I like coupes. I like two-door hardtop coupes. My favorite. I always think I like convertibles, but I never put the top down because my head has no protection, and then I don't wear a hat, and then I'm,
I like convertibles till I bought one.
I'm convertible number 1 and 2-door coupe number 2.
Yeah. So I love the coupe though. I like it's a car that says don't ride with me. Unless you're sitting directly beside me, but I don't really want you in the back seat. And we've made the back seat so uncomfortable that you won't want, if you ever rode in the back of a Camaro or a Trans Am of the day or a Porsche 911 or a 928 or even the Mercedes coupe.
Right.
There is no leg room. I'm not talking about a little bit of leg room. There's no leg room.
Crisscross applesauce. you got to say crisscross applesauce.
Yeah. That's just an insurance. Maybe that's an insurance term, as a matter of fact. But yeah, they put those they had to have a seat in there for insurance.
Sure. There's a lot of things that they did on cars that they did because of insurance reasons. They downplayed horsepower figures back in the 70s.
That's
which was difficult for a manufacturer because here you want to sell the guy the highest horsepower car on the planet. But if you claim that to be that, then all of a sudden you've got the regulators down your throat and, wondering, how can you sell a car with 400 horsepower? A lot of cars had way more horsepower than they were advertised as.
That's right.
I would imagine the SD 455 Trans Ams of 73 and 74 were way more than 270 horsepower. Got to imagine they were 400 horsepower.
Yeah, 350, 400.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then the Z01 Camaros, the aluminum block stuff. All that was way underrated. I'm sure the Hemi cars were way underrated.
Some of the GM stuff was so it wouldn't overshadow the Corvette, especially in the sort of late 80s.
They didn't want the Camaro to have more horsepower than the
Grand
Corvette.
National.
That was part of what Don Yenko did to Camaros and Chevelles and Corvairs back in the day is he did say, you know what, I am going to put a 427 and I'm going to figure out a way around it and do it. And General Motors was like, okay, all right. We didn't really want you to do that, but that's okay. So.
By the way, that building still exists. It's
really?
I'll talk to you after offline about it, but it's out in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania.
You can hear.
Well, I think we should open the Classic Auto Mall Yenko Museum out there. I don't know why anybody hasn't done it.
I'm surprised that they haven't.
Maybe because it's in the middle of nowhere.
One more educational fact.
Yes.
Vintage Air. Is that a new aftermarket?
That's correct, with a very small compressor.
It's the name of the company, actually.
Yeah, Vintage Air is the name of the company. It is a very small compressor, so it can fit under places that maybe couldn't fit a large normal size compressor. A lot of times cars didn't have air conditioning, not because the guy was too cheap to order it, it was because it wouldn't fit under the hood, like at a 427 Corvette. Actually that wouldn't be correct, because the 435 horse you couldn't get air, but the 400 horse in 67 you could get air. So that isn't correct. But anyway, nonetheless, they are smaller and therefore can fit in a tighter space and don't have as much drag on the engine. So, a lot of air conditioning systems would overheat engines because it was just that much extra drag on a car. And if you were racing, obviously you didn't want any extra drag on it, so you would never get air conditioning, and probably not power steering or power brakes, because they all have belts that connect to the engine that slows the engine down.
Would it be vented through the dash like normal? No, it's not one of those down bottom
like a Thunderbird. No, not one of those chrome-looking long.
Sits down on the floor,
which were actually the way I think Thunderbirds actually. And Ford's products of the 50s, actually the way air conditioning came in those. And some Chryslers back in the day had them on the package tray on these little snorkel-looking things, like on a ship, that would come from the trunk. Oh. The actual air conditioning was from the trunk. Seen that. Chrysler Imperials or Imperials weren't actually Chrysler Imperials. They were just Imperials for a period, and then they were Chrysler Imperials, and blah, blah, blah.
Like a Hyundai Genesis became a Genesis.
Something like that. G8. Those Genesis are pretty cool looking, the new ones anyway.
I'm on the hunt for an Equus. You know what that is?
Oh, no. Hyundai.
Hyundai.
Yeah,
and it became the G80, I guess.
Well, it became the Genesis, right?
The Genesis,
Equus was in between regular Hyundai and Genesis.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of their
it was the pre-Genesis Genesis.
It's like a LaSalle.
That's right. And it was like a luxury car. Really obscure and rare.
I had back in the day an interesting car, a Toyota Cressida, which was a six-cylinder Toyota, which when most of them were four cylinders, they would go. It had a little bit of go to it. It was kind of underrated. People didn't really realize what it was, but if you were in the know, you were in the know. I also had another underrated car back in the day, a Q45 Infiniti, which people thought was a Maxima.
Oh,
and people didn't really know what it was.
Bigger than a Maxima.
And it was bigger, a lot bigger. Had an all-aluminum 32-valve V8, had like 280 horsepower, which was a lot. And I had this it was a 91. And that thing would go.
Those were in the day. Yeah, I had a 91 G20.
Oh, yeah.
Which was basically a Sentra SER but insulated with luxury and leather, and it was a much better car.
I tell you, Infiniti, and Lexus came out at the same time, and the Lexus marketing campaign was spectacular. And they sold tons of them. Infiniti was doing rocks and waterfalls, and people didn't quite get what it was. But if you knew, you knew. And you knew that was the performance car to have. And it had a 6-disc CD changer in the console, which was really cool. Because then you didn't have to change albums for 6 whole CDs. So, and it wasn't in the trunk, so you didn't have to get out and go to the back.
Yeah.
But
cool.
I'll never forget that. That was pre-divorce credit rating. And I walked in there, and like in 30 seconds, they're like, "You're approved." We've never seen anybody approved that fast. And then maybe 2 years later, it was like, "You'd like to finance a hamburger at McDonald's, sir?" I'm not sure that...
you just don't see Q45s on the road anywhere.
And
They're
amazing.
I'm looking for J30s, too. I like the J30.
Acura Legends.
Oh,
I had the last generation, or the last version of the first generation, which was the smaller version.
Yep.
I had an LS Gold, with a tan interior, sunroof, and then of course the bigger Legends came out in probably 90 or 91, and they went through about 95 or 96, and they were pretty cool cars at the end. They were maybe 230 horsepower, but a Legend GS had a 6-speed manual back in the day, and that was a pretty cool car. And then of course at the same time in 91 was the NSX Acura and the Acura Integra. Those were great little cars, the Integras.
Saw John Tesh driving an NSX in LA back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yep.
John Tesh.
John Tesh. Entertainment Tonight.
And before we leave new inventory, and either it's new.
We left it a long time ago.
Either it's new or it got moved. Mail truck.
Oh, the mail truck. Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one. I'll make sure to put that on the list next week.
It's a blown mail truck.
Yeah. in no uncertain terms.
It's funny. It says mail delivery or something on it. They can't have the postal logo on it.
Sure.
But it should be express mail delivery with that engine sticking out of the top.
It's crazy.
And reasonable.
I mean, to duplicate it, you would spend a lot more money. Right. Of course, I don't know how many people, you talk about a niche thing. I mean, that's something that somebody either worked for the post office and thought it was cool to have, or there's some connection to it that makes it happen. But you don't have that many people that might have that connection to something like that.
Right.
And it's not downplaying the car. as much as it's just the fact that there's just not that.
That's right. Fighting the butt for that seat.
Yeah, I mean, we have cars like that we really just don't. We can't. It's hard to find the right person for that particular car, whether it's that one or other stuff that we have. That Ferrari that we have, that it very easily, the Austin Healey Ferrari chassis that we just sold, that very easily. It's as easily as it was popular. It could have been one of those things that people were like, I don't really know. Maybe that's not. I can't go to a vintage race with it. I can't maybe go to the Ferrari meet with it because they're not.
Well, it was like the Super Light that sat here for a while. I thought for sure that would sell right away. But it sat for a while.
Yeah, it was so cool. The Cheetah that we had. How about the Cheetah that we never ended up selling? Unfortunately, it was just one of those things. So I guess you got to just that's why it's impossible to predict this business. Otherwise, we'd be sitting on a beach sipping Mai Tais in Jamaica right now and not be...
Instead of downtown Morgantown?
Downtown Morgantown. Well, on a beautiful sunny day, and I know I'm not supposed to say that because then that dates the day.
We do get sunny days here in Morgantown.
We do.
So you can count. Maybe it happens to be a sunny day the day you're listening. You could be listening in the year 2100 for all we know.
And if the wind is just right, you definitely know you're in an agricultural area.
And there's a huge landfill on the other side.
And especially when they're fertilizing the fields.
Right. Is that what they're doing? I
don't know. Let's don't get too deep into that. We've already become a music show, a cooking show, a call show. Now we're going to become agriculture.
We are all things to all people,
Lancaster
Stewart.
County, baby.
We try to be in Lancaster County. So anyway, next week, will we have a show next week? What is the date of the next? Yeah, we will. So we'll be back again to talk about more inane things. We'll talk to you next time on the Classic Auto Mall Podcast.
You've been listening to the Classic Auto Mall Podcast with your host, Stuart Howden, executive producer Steve Safir, produced and engineered by yours truly, J.R. Russ. Thanks for listening and sharing the Classic Auto Mall Podcast. Available on classicautomall.com, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Music courtesy of the Pat Travers Band, produced by Car Smarts Media, copyright 2023, all rights reserved.